Hey there everybody, got another video going today. This is a Pioneer SX-850 and got dropped off to me. It needs a pretty good restoration at this point in time. I'll show you just a few of the things I've observed so far. Basically what I've done to this point is I've taken the cover off the top, as you can see. It is extremely dusty, as most of these are. I blew it out with an air compressor, then used a towel to wipe down some of the component tops or whatnot. Nothing really jumping out. I did a good visual inspection of the top here. Not a lot jumping out, except for some of these capacitors and the power output here are don't appear to be in the greatest of shape, as in slight bulging on two of those. The front of it, certainly needs a good cleaning. Lots of dust and dirt here, as you can see. The power switch is almost stuck on. It's like, to turn this thing on and off, it's really gummed up in there. So we're gonna have to clean that. I pulled the knobs off, as you can see over here. All of them pull off except for one. The big knob here that goes on the tuning knob here. If you'll notice, in one spot on it here, it has a set screw. And I used a little 1.5 millimeter hex head here to Allen wrench to get that off. So I'll drop all these. They are aluminum. I will drop all these in some cleaner and let them soak a little bit and get those really nice and clean. Probably do that tomorrow is my guess. And then there's two screws on the top here, one right here and one right here that you will remove. And then basically you've got a little lock washer like this that screws on to that, and this. And as you can see, I haven't taken this one off yet. It's a 1/2 inch, just regular old 1/2 inch socket here. A wrench. Take that off. Once we get this one off, then it's just a matter of grab this thing on the front and pull straight off. And you can see these things have little push buttons here. If you're not careful, push that back in. These things will pop out, and they've got a spring behind them that's easy to get lost. So highly recommend kind of setting this aside somewhere that it won't get lost like that. And so now you can get to these switches to clean them, and be able to clean the front dial face. We'll go clean the actual panel itself a little later. I did see one other thing. Let me show you here. All right. Right here on the bottom side, it's kind of hard to see. I'll see if I can get the camera angle, but you can see how this cap is bulged right here. Sometimes these things bulge up and it's nothing more than the plastic cap on top, but the actual metal's not bulged. But in this case, you can see that as hard as a rock. The actual metal itself underneath is bulging. So I'm basically just going to replace all these capacitors in the power supply. And we'll go through and check some others. I did see two on the other side that didn't look so great as well. So when we get done with it, I'll mostly have a recap job done. And I definitely got to get into this switch down here as to why it's difficult like that to turn on and off. But it is working. It just seems very gummed up. So probably take it apart and see what we can do with it. Be a short, quick restoration. Hopefully get it done tomorrow on this Pioneer SX-850 and get it back to the customer. And good news, guess what? This switch, it's hard to see down in here. That's why I put the white background behind it. There's actually a mechanical element to this thing where it kind of snaps, and it was intentional. But that whole mechanical piece down in here was just basically gummed up. You can see it. The actual switch part back here itself was fine. So at this point, it's acting all good, and all it took was a little deoxide in there. And I'll end up putting a little bit of, let me show you here. I'll end up putting a little bit of this, which is an electronics lubricant, back down inside the back down inside the actual mechanical part of this switch to help keep it lubed up and good for years to come here. That was good news. I was worried I'd have to buy a new switch, and these little switches like this are not easy to come by and not cheap at all. So I'll probably work this thing about 1,000 times and make sure it's holding up well. All right, got the switch back in here together. Check it out. That's the way it was designed to operate. That clicking noise was intentional. That was the mechanical part of this thing. A little trip in there. Another little secret I'm going to show you. You kind of look at one of these units and you go, wow, I can't get to the potentiometers in here. And whoa, they're way up inside there, and you can't get to them from the top either because you've got all these other boards on top. So you're like, how in the heck am I going to get in there to clean these out? Well, if you'll remove a screw right here, and a screw right here, and then a screw down here, this whole unit here will basically pull out. You can turn it, get to everything you need then, and basically clean this thing out as needed, and then slide it right back in there. Same with this. There's a second one here. Take that out, and that switch out right there, or screw out right there. And then this bottom one pulls out the same as this top one. Now if you notice, I removed those screws there, and down here. And this whole unit swings out then. And it actually has a cover over top of it. So this screw and this screw, you remove them and you'll get the cover off. Let me show you. And with those two screws removed, the cover here comes right off. And guess what? Got the whole unit swung down. Easy to get to the potentiometers. The good news is, even with these things dangling here, you have to kind of be careful what they're touching or whatnot, but the unit will actually play, so you can clean the pots and switches and then play it a little bit, turn them, make sure you don't get any crackling noises, whatnot, before you put it back together. All right, we've got these all cleaned up now, gone through here and deoxed on all of these switches, all these flip switches, which are kind of tough to get into, but we did. And then if you'll notice here, if you'll remove two more screws, the one right here and one right here, then this little panel that you can see how they're kind of tucked up in here a little bit, these will come out as well. Similarly here, these two screws. And once you get it down, then you can spray inside of these really well and get these switches cleaned up as well. And we have it all put back together here. You'll notice these things all switch easily, the knobs turn nice and smooth. Nice and crisp. Same with these buttons here. Nice and crisp. Alright, and we got it all put back together here, as you can see. Kind of coming down through here. Next up, I'm going to attack this power supply. Okay, you have to pinch these little plastic holders right here. There's 4 of them, one in each corner, and they stick through the little holes here in the board. And then once you do that and you pull some wires loose like these, they come out of these little wire retainer things. Had to pull some out of here, as you can see too, but then you can spin this thing around. And I desoldered back here a 3-prong capacitor. This little unit right here. Okay, it's kind of hard to see, but this is the one that the top is got it. You can see how it's bulged right there as I turn it. Got a big bulge right about there on it. Anyway, 3-prong capacitor. 1, 2, 3. 3 prongs back here, but if you'll notice, this middle prong doesn't go to any circuit trace, and likewise on the other side there's no circuit trace that it goes to. These things are a little bit hard to break loose because of the glue they used here to hold these things down to the board. Anyway, it's a 470 microfarad capacitor, and I've got its lovely replacement right here. So you basically ignore the third middle leg here on this thing. And we're going to replace that one and a few others real quick. Alright, over in the other part of the workshop today, if you'll notice, whoever owned these definitely was a smoker. You see the yellow, that's what causes that. At any rate, these things are pretty gummed up and need cleaning. So let me show you my little secret mix here. There's about an inch of it in here. It is about 1/3 Mr. Clean. One reason I like this stuff is it's got Febreze built into it, which does a good job of removing any smoke odors. And it's about 2/3 just plain old water. I find these laying around. I've got 3 teenagers, so I find these laying around the house half drank all the time. I pick them up and keep them down here and use them to keep the sponge wet on my soldering iron. And I use it in this stuff here. But basically, drop these things in. As you can see, I got just enough water and whatnot in there to cover them up. Do the same with all these. And we'll let them sit about 10 minutes. And then we'll use a toothbrush on them. And we'll put them back down in here and stir them up a little bit. And you'll find out that these things turn out beautifully. While we're at it, what we're going to do is dip this into this a good bit. And use it to clean up the faceplate here on this Pioneer. A little bit of sad story on this one. Somebody itched their somebody loved an etching gun and etched, I'm not sure if it's a driver's license number or a social security number, but etched it into the faceplate. But the guy that owns it knows that, and we're gonna get it all cleaned up though. And like I say, it's not a whole lot more than just taking this stuff here, dipping it in a little bit of the green, and coming along and it's like a medium toothbrush, nothing real heavy here. A little bit of wood up here, and we'll just basically end up going over this whole thing really well. And, you notice the reason I got it laying here, these things will pop out the back, and I'll end up dropping them in as well. Let me show you that. You'll notice when these things come out, they've got a spring attached to them. The little end goes towards the front of the button. So we'll just go ahead and pull all these off. And we're going to drop the buttons right down inside there as well. And I noticed one of these springs didn't come out here. I'm going to grab it and pull it out. And we'll put all the springs here in this box where I've got all the other screws that I took off the bottom of this unit. It really helps keep things nice and tidy. Maybe we'll get all stir these things up a little bit. And we'll come back over here and get our brush wet again and continue cleaning in this faceplate a little bit. A couple more things here real quick. You can see all the junk that's coming off of this thing. I'm just wiping down. I usually don't bother to clean the glass itself with this stuff because it'll leave a little bit of a residue on it. Yeah, I mean, it's okay if it gets on there, it's fine, but I usually clean the actual glass with Windex when I get done. It's the last thing I do before I put the faceplate back on it. Got a spot here. Got a little bit of, looks like some tape maybe from years ago right here. I'm going to see if I can get those off. The tape I mentioned earlier, you can see I'm starting to get a little bit of it off, but it's some old dried up tape and it's kind of gummed up on there. So I use one of two things when I'm trying to get rid of tape. This stuff here is really good for like removing stickers and whatnot. It'll soak in and kind of cut through and eat up a sticker. It basically breaks down the glue. And this is a similar story. This is really good for like getting paint off or tar or something that's got onto something. It can be used for the same as this, but it's a whole lot more expensive. So I save this stuff for the really tough stuff. And I think on this one I'll just use a little bit of the Goo Gone. So I'll spray just a little bit of Goo Gone on it. Let it sit for a minute or two. And I use I use little plastic tools like this. I'll show you how I get those. Anytime you buy like an iPhone repair kit or anything of that nature, they always come with these things, and they're designed to use to like crack open cases or whatnot. But I've got lots of them because I've repaired lots of iPhones and whatnot in the past. At any rate, I use these things because they're plastic and they've kind of got an edge to them there. You know, I use it to come along and so I can show you a video. You know, like where this tape was at, I was kind of doing the heck out of it here. Scraped all the tape off, and I know I'm not going to harm the metal surface because it's that's a piece of plastic, but really handy for that. So save those things if you get them. If you remember, this thing had a spot down at the other end too. I sprayed just a dab of that on it, and like I mentioned, I'm basically you can hear it here where it's smooth. Hear it when it hits the gummy stuff. That's all I'm doing, is basically just going back and forth here on this thing until it breaks down and kind of gets rid of all the goop that was a part of whatever that was on it. And eventually be able to wipe that off. I got a little bit more to get rid of. You can still see it right there. I'm going to break it down and let it sit for a few minutes here on that, and let it break that down really good. Okay, here's what I was finding. Whatever that was on there was not getting cut by the little plastic thing. So a trick I learned a long time ago, and it works really well, is just some lightweight steel wool, but you got to get it wet. So I dipped it a little bit into the Goo Gone, and very gently here, back and forth on this thing. And guess what? It is all gone. So just another tip I'll teach you along the way. Alright, as you can see here, lots and lots of yellow gooky smoke stuff. And look how nice this faceplate looks now. Even with the etching on it, I mean, you get more than 3 feet away, you can't see the etching. This thing looks amazing at this point. Like I say, you can see a little bit of the residue here on the glass. That comes from the Goo Gone and the other stuff, but I'll clean that with some Windex right before I install this thing back on. I'll clean both sides of the glass really well. It's always the final step. Starting to get these things out and clean them with the toothbrush a little bit. And we've got one done here. Check this thing out. Bling, bling, bling. It's almost like a disco ball mirror. A disco mirror ball. Anyway, that's what we're shooting for when these things come out of here. Okay. Guess what? Lots of shiny, lots of bling, beautiful knobs ready to go back onto beautiful faceplate over here. It's one of those things, people send a unit in, they get it serviced. I've already got the faceplate off, I've got this stuff off. I just like to do it. The guy didn't ask me to clean the unit. He just said restore it and get it working. Well, to me, part of that's cosmetic. So I went ahead and did this. You know, it's probably 30 minutes worth of work, 20 to 30 minutes, but man, does it make for a nice unit when it's all said and done. Still working on this thing. It's been a few weeks since I last recorded a segment or two, but pretty much got the power supply rebuilt, replaced some capacitors on it, and you've seen plenty of other videos I've done on replacing power supply capacitors, so you can follow one of those. But I'm having an interesting phenomenon here, and I'll show you what's happening. If you notice, I've got the controls selector switch out right now that lets you switch between auxiliary, phono 1, phono 2, etc., AM, FM. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. And then this is the volume control section that's out right now as well. This is actually the volume knob. Let me give you a demo here real quick. Let me get some music going. Okay, so We're on auxiliary. Everything sounds clean as can be. Volume. No cutting in or out. Nice and clean. But come over here and let me show you FM. Not that I have much of a signal down here, but as I tune the band here. Actually, I think I'm on AM.
Full kitchen and daily lunch specials. Online at MirageExoticNightlife.com.
You can see we got a good signal and sounds well. But watch what happens. Watch what happens when I go to phono, either one of them. Hear the popping noises. At any rate, you can see as I go back to phono, all these loud popping noises. Sounds great on FM. Sounds great on auxiliary. AM, FM, AM. I can't pick up a station down here, but as soon as I hit one of the phono buttons, it's gone, and I'll show you why. We've mounted the volume controls and whatnot back in place. We've mounted the switches back in place, and you can probably hear here. Let me hit the button. Still got music playing well. I go down here to the FM. Sounds good. Really bad on the phono, so let me stop the music. Alright, here's what's going on. There is a board called AWF-011, and if you'll notice right here, AWF-011, this board is kind of the phono equalizer stage board, and these 6 chips right here and these capacitors are notorious for causing issues. So we're basically going to rebuild this board, put in some new transistors, replace all the caps, and then at that point we will hopefully have a functioning phono section. Alright, it's another fine Sunday morning here, trying to get this Pioneer SX-850 wrapped up. If you'll notice, I've got this board pulled out that we talked about last time. It was as simple as pinching the little connectors here, kind of close in together, and all 4 of them popped off the stands. Was able to unconnect it out of the little wire holder here, which gave me plenty of room here to work with this thing as I move it around. And thus far, I've replaced a couple capacitors, and I'm starting to work on the transistors. So let me show you. I pulled out a transistor right here. Kind of hard to see, but if you notice here, you got a little teeny arrow about where the tip of my finger's at. That's the emitter. And of course the flat part back here is the base, and then you got the collector. So pretty neat that they drew a little picture for you. But let me show you where this gets interesting. Hang on one second. Okay, so there's a good article out here on Audio Karma about these things, and it talks about parts and what you can use to replace. But there's really 2 transistors on that board that we were talking about. There's some 2SC1313s, which is what I just pulled out. If you'll notice right here, it's really hard to see, but let me see if I can get focused on it. You can see that's kind of a C1313 is what it says. And then the other is the 2SA725, and it'll tell you what you can replace them with. These KSC1854 EBU and KSA99 2FBU. But let's note one thing it says here, like on this 2SC1313, it says BCE, base collector emitter, but then on this new package it lists it here as ECB. And so I show you over here, I actually verified that. So this is the new 2KSC1845 FTA, which is in essence the same as this. It's a more modern version. But I actually took this 1313 chip here and put it in the peak atlas semiconductor component analyzer, and it came back and told me it was laid out BCE. And then I took the replacement here that I'm about to put in it, and I laid it out here and let it do its analyzing, and it came back and told me that sure enough it was laid out red, which is emitter, blue, which is collector, and green, which is base here, as you can see. So it's actually laid out emitter, collector, base. So it's a replacement transistor to replace that one, but the pins are laid out differently. So when we go to install this thing, we have to be aware of that. Always check your component lead layouts. Usually there's good diagrams you can find online. These devices here, as you can see, are Fairchild Semiconductor, which are really good chips. You can go online and pull up the data sheet and see how they're laid out. But I always like to just test them just to be sure, in case I accidentally pull up the wrong thing or something. But we're going to get these things installed, and I'll show you from there. Okay, I haven't actually soldered this in yet, but if you'll notice now, using that little picture underneath the transistor right there, and knowing that the new layout is emitter, collector, base, I put the first lead in the one that's got the little arrow on it, the emitter, the second one back here in the collector spot, and the third one over here on the right where the base of the transistor is. So it's just a matter of orienting the chip in a slightly different direction. But I'm going to get this thing soldered in, and we'll hit the rest of this board. Thought I'd show you, when I bought these transistors, I bought 20 of them, and what you'll notice when you go to buy them is buying 2 of them or 20 of them is only $1 or $2 difference. Mostly what you're paying for is shipping, to be honest. These things are like 3 or 5 cents a piece, so might as well go ahead and get some more, so the next time you need them you don't have to pay shipping again. And the other thing I was going to show you, as I'm removing these transistors, I use this little solder sucker here, and it's made in Japan. It's titled Engineer Solder Sucker, but the thing's all aluminum, machined, and it's really small, lightweight, easy to handle in one hand. Kind of click it down here, get this close, and use your thumb here, and I mean, it's like the easiest one I've ever found to use. I've got quite a few of these things here. Let me dig a couple of them up out of the drawer here. But got some big ones here. Ungar makes these big ones like this, and then of course over time I've had the typical ones you see laying around. These aren't bad, none of them are bad, but these typically run about $7 to $10 a piece, something like that. This little unit was more like $30, but I absolutely love it. So the interesting thing is that you only get them out of Japan, and so when you order it, it takes about 3 or 4 weeks to show up at your door, but well worth it. Like I said, it's easy to hold, easy to get right now where you're wanting to put it at, easy then to hit with your thumb here. Does its work. Great little tool. Alright, we got all the transistors replaced. As you can see here, there's the 6 I replaced, and there's the solder that when you kind of push this thing out and clean it out a little bit, it drops them out of it. But we'll clean that up as well. At any rate, I'm going to get this thing turned back on and test it out. So the board is done now. Let me show you. I showed you we got the 6 transistors replaced. The interesting thing is, if you take the semiconductor analyzer and hook it up to any of those 6, all 6 of them test good. So there's a difference between a dead transistor, a good transistor, and a noisy transistor. And these happen to be noisy transistors. It just didn't hold up well with age. Something about the chemical compound inside of them lends them to be noisy, and these modern replacements hopefully won't have that problem, and hopefully even with time they won't have. But let me give you a little demo here. So I haven't even put this back down on the stands. It really doesn't need to, because the stands don't ground it in any way. As long as it's not touching anything. Reach over here, hit the power switch. Okay, at this point, if you'll notice, I'm plugged into the aux port here, which is lit up. Sounds really good. Let's go over here to FM. To find the station. There we go. Sounding good on that. AM. Should get a bunch of static. But good news. Phono. Dead quiet. Phono 2. Dead quiet. So remember earlier when I went to phono, you heard pop, pop, crackle, crackle. Dead quiet now, and it's because these noisy transistors have been replaced. Yeah. Let me get some music going into the phono here and let you hear that. Alright, we're about ready to put the faceplate back on this, just so it makes it simpler before I hook up the phono. But one thing I was going to tell you is before I put these things back together, I always use a cloth here that doesn't produce dust. So this is a little rag specifically made for washing windows on cars and whatnot. You can get them in the auto shop section at your local big box retailer. Anyway, the goal is to not have any dust particles. If you use a paper towel, you will have dust on the inside of this thing. And when I go to put this back on here, don't want any dust on the inside. Alright, we've inserted all the springs with the large part downward. See if you notice the spring, small end, large end. The large end goes downward, and they go inside of each and every one of these. And then you have a basically the middle part that snaps down in there and kind of gets caught by these things and held in place. We'll put all these together. I just wanted to show you how these went back in here. When you go to put the faceplate back on, switch all of the knob little switches here in the up position. If you don't, it makes it a pain. But basically, you push the unit back on there. You then have these three little screws that hold the faceplate on. Once you got those on there, and I'll tighten them down with a wrench here in a minute, but once you got those on there, I always like to check and make sure that the buttons work properly. So in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. As you can see, these are all operating properly. These are gamed together, and only one's active at a time, as you can see. So good. We got to get these tightened back on, get the knobs back on the front. I'll flip it over and hook a turntable up to it. When putting knobs back on, the easiest way to get them back on correctly is if the knob has a center notch, like this balance, you can turn it to the right, you can turn it to the left, but in the middle you feel a notch. You just align the little ticket here at the very top. But a lot of these knobs won't have a top spot. So what we end up doing is I always turn them all the way left, and then I'll line the little tick up with the bottom left. It's kind of hard to see here. With the very bottom left indicator here. And sometimes the left indicator isn't where the end of the knob needs to go, so sometimes you end up playing left and right with them. But that's a good place to get you started there. Same with this one. And same with the volume knob here. I did it on the left-hand side here, and you can see it's a nice smooth knob. Going to get this one put on. It's a little different. This one, if you remember, had the little set screws in here that held it on.
Remember, time flies like an arrow.
Phono. Just an old Techniques table that I picked up not long ago and serviced.
But she asked around, and a job she found, tending bar for Gypsy Sally. Well, she saved enough to get back home when spring replaced the winter. But her dreams were denied. Her pa had died. Oh, the word come down.
All right, good news. Unit is sounding great, looking great. Gonna check just a few more things and wrap this thing up. Now that I've got the unit all functional the way I want it, the last thing I usually do before I wrap up at one like this is do all the cosmetics. So that includes light bulbs. So let's look at what we've got going here. We've got good FM going here, but I notice when I get to a spot where I hit stereo, don't have stereo light lighting up. When I go to aux, I get aux lit up. When I go to phono 2, when I go to phono 1, when I go to FM, when I go to AM, I get lit up. When I go to speaker B, I get lights. When I'm on speaker A, I don't. So I know 2 bulbs I've got burnt out here. And then let's look on the top here. If you'll notice, these are little screw in, yeah, they kind of twist in type bulbs. Got one lit up here, got one lit up over here. And this one's not lit up, this one's not lit up. And when you actually pull the thing out, what you get here is a little socket. And inside that socket is a little 8-volt, 300 milliamp wedge style bulb. So this thing actually pushes inside of, hang on, I'll show you here, inside of this little socket like such. When you pull it out, if I can get it out, you can see how it wedges down inside of the contacts down in there. Alright, I'm going to need 2 bulbs of this type, and they're not cheap. They're about $3 or $4 a piece. And I'm going to need to replace these 2 bulbs. Let me show you what you do to go about doing that. If you notice, this little rail that runs across has 3 screw holes. One down here at the end, one in the middle, and one here, and I've already removed those. When it does, this thing will pull back, as you can see. Let me kill the power real quick to this thing. And then on the top here, there's a glass plate, plexiglass, with a screw here and here on each end. You get those 2 screws out, and this whole thing just kind of slides straight out the back then. And then you can get down in here to these little sockets that hold the bulbs. These are not screw-in type. These have to be wired in. Wires have to be cut. Wires have to be soldered, and we'll get those replaced as well. Those are 8-volt bulbs as well. We trace the wires back from the ones going to the stereo indicator here. And if you'll notice, they come all the way back. One goes to right here on a board. The other one comes the other side down to right here. The reason I did that is I put my own meter across here and here, this blue wire. And what I found was there's no continuity, which told me the bulb was dead. I always like, before cutting the wires, to make sure the bulb's really dead and it's not something else causing the bulb not to light up. Anyway, I brought the 2 blue wires down. If you'll notice how I'm going about this, so I've cut them at this point in time. The 2 blue wires here. Let me get the focus a little better. There we go. That's much, much better. Okay, so I got the 2 blue wires cut, And what I've done is I've soldered them onto the white wires, which lead down to the actual bulb itself. And I've soldered them. If you notice how neatly they are soldered in a line here, it's kind of hard to get this thing focused real well, but there you go. And if you'll notice all the way down here at the bulb, these two blue things, well, what are those? They're a piece of heat shrink tubing. So all I've got to do now is slide this heat shrink tubing upwards. If I can do this with one hand, I'll hold the camera. Hang on a second. I'll slide it up and over here, over the spot where I soldered it. I'll do the same on the other one. Hit it with the heat shrink gun. And here, let me just show you. And we got this handy dandy heat shrink gun. Got a switch here on it, two high and low. And I'll just usually typically use it in low. And you'll notice it will shrink the blue right around it. The blue heat shrink right around it. Okay. We are good and sealed up at this point. Let me turn this thing on. And check this out. Gets stereo sound, but not sounding great. Let me turn the light off a second. This will help. As I find a stereo station. Aha! We have stereo indicator lighting up. All I gotta do is kind of route this back up through into the top and plug it in. Okay, a little bit hard to see here from the side, but you can see I've routed those white wires up, and these things just plug in. These are kind of rubberized sockets, and that bulb just plugs right in there. I'll turn it back on. Let the speakers kick in. And let's see what happens when I find an FM station or stereo. There it goes. There we go. We have the stereo indicator working. I don't get a lot of FM signal. I'm in the basement of a house, and so it doesn't, without hooking an external antenna up of some sorts, I don't get a really good signal down here. But as you can see, it's coming on and off here as as it kind of tunes from into stereo and not. Anyway, I'm happy with that, really happy. So we can find another FM station way down here in the basement. Not so easy. There it goes. As you can see, it's lit up. Alright, check it out. Speaker A, off, on. Speaker B, off, on. Stereo indicator, off, on. And if you'll notice, I've got them just pushed up in there really good the way they're supposed to be. And you can see the little bit down in here where I did the heat shrink tubing on these as well. I've got to order these two bulbs here. I'm actually out of them. So they should be here by Wednesday or so. I'll get these things put back in there, and when they show up, and get the cover back on it and get this back to the customer later this week. I think I'm going to call it a wraps at this point because this thing's sounding great. Playing good music, doing what it's supposed to do, tuned up well. I did check the bias and whatnot on the outputs. I didn't make a video on that this time. I may do that another day. Check the FM alignment, it looked well. Some of that's a little more advanced, and we'll get into that into some later videos. But beyond that, this thing is looking good and ready to go. Guys and gals, appreciate you watching, and stay tuned. We'll keep bringing you more and more. One thing I've done, I've kind of shut down my intake on my electronics business, primarily for the remainder of this year. A couple things. I've got a big kitchen and den remodel going on to my day job, which is not a trivial one at that. Has been very, very busy. lately. And third, I got a bunch of my own projects. I probably got, you think I'm joking, but I probably got 100 pieces, maybe 200 pieces of my own stereo equipment I'd like to start working on some of. So thought I'd take a break till around Christmas time, first of the year, from taking in customer stuff, and actually work on some of my own stuff and get you guys get to see some of that. Most of my personal stuff's tube gear, so you'll be happy to get to see some of that. But hopefully this gave you a good update on the Pioneer SX-850 and the 750, the 950, the 1150. They're pretty much all the same units, with the exception of the output sections change a little bit as they step up or down. Thanks again, and stay tuned.